On the podcast, 1,000 new jobs and 10,000 Kiwis to be trained before Christmas. That's the promise from Amazon Data Services, who are setting up shop in New Zealand. But is this new, or is it a desperate rehash from the Prime Minister searching under every rock for a win to boost his sagging poll ratings? So let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, proudly sponsored by the Brothers Green. Unlock the innate power of New Zealand botanicals to support your mobility. Try the Brothers Green New Zealand Move Joint Support Tonic and join over 20,000 other Kiwis experiencing easier movement. For as little as $1 a day, you too can experience the power of New Zealand hemp seed oil for your joint health. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
G'day, welcome to the podcast. I'm Duncan Garner. Good to have you along and welcome. So 1,000 jobs and 10,000 to be trained and ready to go before Christmas. All up, 100,000 Kiwis to be trained over time in this high-end data subscription service. Amazon Data Services is big business and good news for New Zealand, but it's old news. This Luxon deal was announced in 2021 by Labour. Amazon Data Services was meant to open in 2024, but construction was halted in 23. But today, Amazon Web Services has officially opened the new Auckland data centres, claiming the move will add 1,000 jobs. Is it a new announcement? Or is it Prime Minister Christopher Luxon desperately rehashing something that was announced in 2021 under Jacinda Ardern? Let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, so let's be clear what this is today. And it's good news, so let's bank that. No question, it's good news. Any foreign company the size of Amazon that goes ahead with a $7.5 billion investment, adding 1,000 jobs, is without question great news. And Luxon's been running all over town, cashing in on the headline. The big headline that says 1,000 jobs, all those jobs created. Just how many Kiwis will be trained in these high-end tech jobs? So bank this, New Zealand. It's certainly not got people talking. And Luxon, as our marketer and salesman-in-chief, is naturally front and centre and desperately trying to be linked to the success of this announcement. Good on him. I would too. But let's call it, folks. And this is not to put the boot into Luxon. It's just keeping it real. This deal was initially announced in the middle of COVID all the way back in 2021, September, when the minister at the time was David Clark from Labour. And Labour obviously sang from the rooftops about the deal. And just like today, back in September of 2021, 1,000 jobs were promised at this data centre and storage facility. But in 2023, construction was stalled and the 2024 opening of it was put back. Now it's been opened as of today. It's underway. That's today's announcement. The rest of it is just reheated and rehashed from previous years. It's so old that David Clark's no longer an MP. Or minister. He's not even in Parliament. He's gone. But to suggest that Luxon brokered this in some form, it's and with the big tense deal making in a huge win, it's completely incorrect. He's not even saying that. He's not taking credit for it. And he accepts it started under Labour. But of course, that's the background to the deal, that Luxon's hoping that his face gets plastered all over this. Headline news, 1,000 jobs, all that sort of thing. Truth is, those 1,000 jobs have been coming since September 23, 2021. But Luxon needs some wins as poll ratings aren't increasing. The danger with today's announcement is that voters see right through it and see how desperate Luxon is to be linked with success. Of course he is. But this is not as a result of his own investment summit. And that's what Luxon needs, in my view. He needs something he can call his own. He needs to be able to say and show to Kiwis what the benefit of having him as PM really is. This is me. This is what I do. Sure, wealthy foreigners can now buy expensive houses here, and that benefits the very, very rich, which most of us can only dream of. But it's so top end that it won't affect none of us. We need jobs. We need high-paying jobs, and this provides that. But we've known that for years. We're still waiting for these good jobs to appear and to be created. We don't need re-announcements to make us feel good. We need really good jobs that have been promised to come to fruition, and we're still waiting. Sure, they'll come, hopefully, and that's been re-announced again today. The jobs are coming 4 years down, so is Christmas. And it hasn't been smooth sailing, this data centre from Amazon. It would have, it's going to cost 20 to 30% more in New Zealand than Australia, but they've stayed the course and they're doing it in New Zealand. Foreign investment matters in New Zealand. Already this year, 300 uber-rich foreigners have spent about $2 billion into the New Zealand economy. That's just this year alone. That's why National's allowing them now to buy houses as long as they're worth $5 million or more. That makes sense. It's another market at the top end. The wealthy Kiwis will salute Luxon for this. It allows them to sell to the world again. It's more likely they'll get higher prices, but the real market won't be affected. Back to Amazon, though. This is not Luxon's deal. But he's more than happy to play cheerleader, and to be fair, that's his job. One thing Luxon was less keen to promote today was the bad news, of course, for workers. Well-known retailer Smith City has been placed in voluntary administration. The chain's a popular furniture and electronics retailer. Large presence in the South Island, set up in 1918, I think. The company, which was founded, 1918, has 9 stores across the country and an online store as well. So the administrators, BDO, said the company had faced increasing financial pressures amid a challenging economic environment. They've already tried to fix this before. Despite closing some stores and further cuts, falling sales led to the company director, Colin Neal, making the decision to halt trading. So as of this morning, all 9 of the stores in the online store had been temporarily closed for business to allow administrators to undertake an urgent review of the company's financial position and next steps. More than 450 people may end up losing their jobs depending on how this plays out. They're real jobs. The 1,000 high-end, well-paying jobs at Amazon Data Services are still yet to come, but the Smith City ones are under jeopardy today. They've been promised these 1,000 jobs since 2021, so let's hope they can close the deal. The Smith City jobs may well be gone the next couple of weeks. The pain in the economy is still very real, and some days it's a step forward and 2 back. The latest data shows that company liquidations are up 26%. 745 construction companies went under last year, twice as many as the year before. The real economy, folks, continues to do it tough, in my view. So there's still a long way to go. And while today's reminder about Amazon forging ahead here in New Zealand is welcome, it's not new, and Luxon needs fresh wins, big wins he can call his own. He needs to be able to show Kiwi workers he's not just on the side of the uber rich, but he's on your side too, and he's making your life better. Right now, the polls indicate that the little people are yet to be convinced. Watch this space. Let's go. Let's continue.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Right, to discuss this, my panel and former MP and the man who now runs a firm directly targeting wealthy foreigners is Stu Nash, and of course commentator Ashley Church. Gents, g'day, nice to see you.
Kia ora.
G'day, mate.
Good to see you guys. The Amazon Data Services deal that Luxon's put his face all over this morning. Stu, you'll remember this. You were in Cabinet in 2021 when Labor announced it.
Yeah, well, they all say, it's not the bloke who turns the first sod, it's the one that cuts the ribbon. And Labor announced this. I think it was announced by David Clark back in the day. But Luxon is the man who cuts the ribbon, and so I suppose he's allowed to have the victory on this one. But so people are very, very clear. Luxon did not negotiate this. This was done under Labor. But they're here. Fantastic. It's good news. It's a good news New Zealand story. So if we take the politics out of it, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. So whatever Luxon says or doesn't say, it doesn't really matter. He's not even claiming that he's winning it. He doesn't have to claim that that was his deal. He just has to be there, Ashley. And 1,000 jobs is 1,000 jobs.
Interesting. I'm just done a bit of I've talked to my friend ChatGPT just to find out a bit of the background of why it's taken so long. And it's interesting here because it's telling me that as Stu was saying, it was actually originally launched in 2021 or announced, and that the Amazon was going to invest $7.5 billion over 15 years into the Auckland region in these things called 3 availability zones. And it's just saying here that the reason it stalled, this is fascinating, was that the council paused consents over stormwater design. So how familiar is that story? And there was also a small site fire. So by 2024, basically everybody's accepted that the whole thing was toast. So obviously something's happened between now and then. They kicked it off again. Interesting to see what happens over the next 15 years, whether that investment's actually made. It's as I understand it, Stu, correct me if I'm wrong, it's primarily about data storage. And with the proliferation of AI over the next few years, that's actually going to become quite important. So New Zealand's poised quite strongly to be in that space, not just with Amazon, but with a whole range of other providers. So if we can get this right, there's actually quite a big opportunity here.
Yeah, it could be a magnet, Stu. It could be a magnet that brings in, as Ashley says, it could be that data services centre. We become that guy,
Oh, no, there's a whole lot of these going around the world, to be honest. So, I don't think we'll become the storage centre for Ireland, for example. But with data sovereignty, there's a whole lot of issues that are tied up on this. For example, a lot of New Zealand's data goes offshore at the moment, and I remember reading an article about, okay, if the police are doing a criminal investigation, can they access this data from an overseas jurisdiction that they haven't got an agreement with? So having it here is really good for data security. As Ashley said, it's a good investment. I think it's about the same amount of money that Jeff Bezos spent on his wedding, but all power to him. And like you say, you can't argue over 1,000 jobs. But stormwater, I didn't know that, Ashley. That is outrageous.
Yeah. No, Ashley, you're right. Yeah, you're bang on the money. And the fast track stuff, so having the fast track in there, in the background, helps foreign companies push ahead or not push ahead, right?
Oh, yeah, Stu.
100%. I mean, fast tracking, this is the thing that the listeners and the viewers have got to understand. Fast track isn't rip, shit, and bust. It's not saying that these things don't have integrity. What it is doing is ensuring that people who are making investment decisions can do it in a timely manner. And as Ashley mentioned again, this being, stymied because of drain water consents is ridiculous. We've got to get with the picture. We're a small island at the bottom of the world. If we're not seen to be fast movers in this, then we will miss out.
In fact, you're absolutely right, and that particular incident and what it epitomizes what I understand fast track to mean. Fast track, as you say, is not necessarily about speed; it's about removing unnecessary obstacles to make sure that things can proceed without being moribund in council and government regulation. And in that regard, these guys are actually doing a reasonably good job.
And actually, well spotted with that too, because I heard the Prime Minister this morning say that Amazon Data have said to them that it's going to cost 20 to 30% more, no matter what, to set up in New Zealand compared to Australia. So we need to make sure, even at a higher cost margin to these companies, that we're attractive in some way. Having stormwater blow in your face halfway through the deal, that's the sort of thing that would see these companies go, F it, I'm out, So, yeah, I think it's crucial.
Interesting, though, because the term used with stormwater design, and in my dealings with councils over the years, I suspect that means that the S-bend was in the wrong place. It wasn't necessarily anything to do with where the water was. It'll be something really stupid, and it will have held it up for quite some period of time. It's the sort of thing that shouldn't happen, and hopefully it won't going forward.
It stopped construction. It halted it in 2023. So in 2023, They said, too hard. And they stopped. Imagine an S-bend pipe stopping 1,000 jobs and $7.5 billion of investment.
Yeah, but this goes back to the point. So when I'm a Hawke's Bay boy. The Vesties used to own a big freezing works down there. Vesties are a huge, big British, very, very wealthy family, own meatworks around the world. The workers went on strike. Lord Vesti came and said, if you buggers don't get back to work, I'm just closing the plant down. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
and they went, oh, okay. And this is what Amazon has the ability to do. If you've got some little minor bureaucrat in council going, don't like the shape of your S-band, then Amazon just goes, oh, well, that's fine. We're out of here. It's just, you got to make it easy for these guys, but in a way that has integrity.
Yep, completely agree.
Can Labor take credit today? Can Labor stand up and say, hey, and they will, can Labor stand up and say, hey, this is our work? This is our win.
I wouldn't be surprised if Labor scores an own goal on this, because you're right. If they were smart, they would absolutely take credit for this. But I wouldn't be entirely surprised, given the current leadership, if they come out now and decide that they're no longer in favour of it and criticise it.
I know. You know what? I was about to say, what can they find anti in this? Because I look at the back of their comments and they were, Stu, your team was effusive in their praise about this. David Clark is no longer with us in terms of being in Parliament. They said there's nothing wrong, and we can't find anything wrong with a deal like this. It's all about jobs and Kiwis.
Well, they'd be absolute mugs, because there's plenty to have a go on the government on, and this is not one of them.
I agree.
So, there are some things you play politics on, some things you play the big New Zealand overarching, fantastic sort of story, and this is one of those.
Shall we have a small wager?
What's the question? What's the wager? What do you reckon?
Will Labor score an own goal over their reaction to this announcement?
Yeah. Well, they've got form. Will Labor fuck this up like they did with Erica Stanford's?
There is that. Another way of putting the same question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to go beyond the beltways.
A bucket of Duncan's avocados from his Mangawai property.
Well, there's actually bananas on the property, but not yet avocados, Stu. But bananas are there. Hey, so Luxon has also said this morning that this is great because it means that the wealthy guys who come to town for this, they can set up shop here, but buy a house, which is much more attractive for them. So they can buy a property next to mine in Mangawai. Or if you don't do that, then maybe it's not as attractive to bring investment in. Do you buy that, Ashley? That you need to be able to buy a house to invest?
Well, if you don't mind, let me take a step back. You and I have been talking about this in another forum since 2018 when this policy was first enacted. And you guys will both remember, in fact, you were in the caucus at the time, Stu, that this all came about as a result primarily of not Winston Peters, but Phil Twyford. Phil Twyford did a study prior to the 2017 election where he came out and said that 30% of all houses, primarily in Auckland, but also in other parts of the country, were being bought by Asians. And what he based that on was people who had Asian-sounding names. It was hugely scientific. And anyway,
So bad, wasn't it? Chinese sounding names. Yeah, Mr. Young.
Subsequently, Stats New Zealand did some study into this and found that, in fact, the real number was about 3%. And the reason that, by the way, the reason he claimed for that was because real estate agents were telling him as they went into auction rooms that there were Asians bidding on property. Of course they were. They were Kiwis. They were people that had immigrated here. They were New Zealanders. However, not to let the facts get in the way of a good story, New Zealand first joined the coalition in 2017, and the foreign buyers ban was born and implemented. Between 2018 when it came in and late 2021 when house prices started first going up, the foreign buyers ban had, and get this clearly, guys, not a jot of difference or not a jot of impact on the housing market, on house prices, not a jot. It was never going to, and you remember back at the time, Duncan, I was telling you it wouldn't have any impact on house prices. It was never going to. And when they did start going up, nothing to do with foreign buyers or lack of them. So this policy, which is a tiny little revision of a small part of that, basically says, well, we're going to let it foreign buyers come back in, but they've got to be already investing money into the country, and they're only allowed to buy one house, and it's got to be worth over $5 million. This is going to have no impact on the market. This is a joke. It's window dressing by the government, and it's a win to Winston.
Yeah, it might be 5 houses a year if you're lucky.
If that. By the way, I would be in favour of getting rid of the foreign buyers ban in its entirety, but this is not that.
No, it won't be 5 houses a year. There'll be hundreds sold, but it's at the 5 million level. So in terms of good, hardworking Kiwis trying to get on the housing ladder, no impact whatsoever. There's about 10,000 houses in New Zealand with a value over 5 million, and about 7,000 of those are livable. And so, you're competing with the lotto winners here, not first home buyers. So Kiwis who are working really, really hard, 6.5 days a week to get that foot on the ladder, won't see any difference whatsoever. In fact, this will benefit them because these wealthy guys come into this country, they spend money, they invest in our companies. The visa they come in under is called the Active Investor Plus. I know I launched the visa when I was Minister of Economic Development. So this isn't about sticking money in the bank and recycling it. This is about putting money into our economy. This is a really good thing. In my view, if you're investing $5 million in this country, you should be able to buy a house, right? Why not? And let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story why New Zealand's popular at the moment. So I had some mates who went to Stanford University. They had broken up into groups and they had to come up with a tagline for New Zealand. And I want to use this for my company, actually. And I think it'd be a fantastic billboard as you're heading out on the motorway to LAX or JFK, one of those big American passports. The tagline they came up with in New Zealand is New Zealand, the place you want to be when the world turns to shit. And you know what? For many at the moment, it's turning to shit, and we are well positioned to take this and to take advantage of this. And if people can buy a house over 5 million, all power to them. I think you'll see a lot of them being built as well.
So it's not often I disagree with my mate Stu, but this is going to make no difference. Yeah, I'm sure those numbers are right. It's going to make no difference whatsoever. Tell you what's interesting though, it's an associated side issue, but there was a minor stoush last week between Bishop and Luxon over their views on whether house prices should come up or down. Luxon was claiming they should increase and wanted to see them go up, and Bishop saying they should come down, which is really interesting, which feeds into A, where Luxon's head's at with regard to this stuff, and B, whether he does Bishop's permission, I guess. Interestingly, on that issue, Bishop's completely wrong. Bishop's got this naive idea of Generation X's that somehow if house prices come down, it's going to be good for the economy. Tell that to the Housing Corporation. There's 500,000 rentals in this country, and the private investors own about 80% of them. So if you get private investors out of the market, basically you've got a major issue for the government in terms of the provision of housing for people that are renting. Tell that to people who want to buy a business who've paid off their mortgage for 10 or 15 years and use the equity in their homes as it increases in order to help them to buy a business. If your house price isn't going up or worse is going down, look at what happens to the 80% of Kiwis who actually invest in the SME sector. It's just a bad, and tell that to the people who use it as a form of retirement. I mean, it's a silly comment from somebody who doesn't normally make silly comments.
And actually, you are 100% right here. As a politician, the last thing you want is for people to feel poor. Yep. And as you mentioned, a whole lot of people bought a house as the market went up. If you're sitting on $1 million mortgage at the moment, and interest rates are beginning to come down, but 80% of Kiwis are fixed, and suddenly your $1 million house is now worth $850,000. You're pretty pissed off about that. So politicians, this is a given. I thought it was until Bishop mentioned it. Politicians do not want house prices to drop because it's bad for them. So
I agree.
No one wants them to go through the roof, but a period of stability would be good.
You look at 2003 in that Labor government. You look at 2008 onwards with Key in that 2012 bounce. I was part of the housing market in those two times, twice, and they went boom, right? And those politicians sat at 40% comfortably, right? But as an average sort of popularity, they sat there. Whereas Luxon right now is sitting at 30, and I blame the fact that the housing market's gone soft. No one feels like they can go to Bunnings and spend like they did. No one's doing renovations. The lawyers aren't working for them. The values aren't there. There's not the guys doing the lawns and everything. It's just stuffs the market. New Zealand's a housing market economy.
And a bit of window dressing on the foreign buyers ban's not going to fix that, guys.
No. But the foreign buyers ban, the thing is I agree with you. Actually, it's not going to make one iota of difference to the housing market. But I do think, and I've lost about 4 clients recently because they couldn't buy a house here. And I was talking to a global investor migrant company, and they said, you know what, people come to us, we talk about New Zealand, and we advise them, global people advise global investor migrants, don't go to New Zealand, you've got to invest $3 million US and you can't buy a house. So this will make a difference for them. But in terms of the housing market, not one iota of difference. And so, but Labor's come out against us because it said it would. Shows how out of touch they are. Bloody ridiculous.
La land, mate. So you managed to get through to Winston on the lobbying side of things, so they can buy the houses now, Stu. So you were talking to Winston. You lobbied him at $5 million.
Yeah, but the thing is Winston has always been, you know this, Dunk, and you know this, Ashley, Winston and Shane and the New Zealand First has always been about economic development and jobs for good, hard-working Kiwis in the regions. And
it's more than that, though. It's not just about jobs. It's about economic nationalism. It's this idea. It's the same stuff Trump said. It's this idea that you fix your own economy, you do everything you can from within, and you only let nasty, horrible foreigners in to the extent that you absolutely have to.
That's Winston. So why then did Luxon put up $30 million for regional airlines, but nothing for the mills? So we've got these mills falling over because construction's down, energy prices are high. We know all that, right? So why would you go and look after all these other industries, but not them?
Well, you know the answer to that. Mate, he used to run Air New Zealand, so he thinks he knows a little bit about how to run an airline. Doesn't know anything about sawmill. Doesn't know much about anything according to all the polls. But this is where you
go, Stu. Go.
Just saying. This is where you've got to be careful as a government, right? If you try and pick winners as opposed to putting policies in place that allow winners to emerge, like things like accelerated depreciation, then you get better outcomes if you put the building blocks of a sound economy in place. But you pick winners, it's a difficult game, that one.
It's an interesting line, isn't it? It's a subtle, particularly for a national party, that the balancing act, the ballet act between those two things. I agree with you.
Well, when you do pick winners, and I'll go back to your government, Stu, a number of years ago, which was the jobs machine, Jim Addington, and you had sovereign yachts, and they were going to create hundreds of jobs, whatever, and Bill Lloyd and everything. I remember covering this stuff. You've got to be careful with the picking winners and claiming the 1,000 jobs or whatever, because when you claim 1,000 jobs, all you got to do is go and check later on to find out if it ever met. So it's always a dangerous thing. But some governments just have to pick winners, both sides. They have to back something, don't they?
Look, you can to a certain extent, and you know this, Dunk, because remember Phil Twyford came out and said, we're going to build 10,000 houses a year. And I remember you holding to account saying, are you sure, Phil? 10,000 a year? And he ripped every reporter who called him out, said, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, then when he built about 1,000 a year, you guys...
600. He built 600 all up. 600 all up, I reckon. Actually, you know this.
Well, here's the thing with Twyford, because I actually had quite a bit of dealing with him at the time, as I'm sure you did too, Stu. Twyford believed that. This wasn't hype. Twyford believed it, and he had this fascinating formula that he had done, and you'll remember this, Stu, where the money to build these houses were going to come from recycling. So as he sold them, that money was going to be reinvested into purchasing new homes. And in a sort of a unicorn fantasy universe where everything fell into place perfectly, it may well have worked, but the reality was he wasn't in a unicorn. Well, he was on the 9th floor, but he wasn't in a universe. He was in the real world, and that was never going to work. And we ended up with what we got. And I actually feel sorry for Phil, because he was a true believer on that stuff. He really believed in what he was doing. He wasn't somebody who was just saying that stuff for the sake of it.
I agree and completely disagree with you. He believed it, but it was a slogan. He was promoting a slogan. They hadn't done any of the hard work off the back of it. And when you say 100,000 homes over 10 years, when have we ever done that?
By the way, do you guys know where that 100,000 came from? Because I do. Because I used to write a lot about that, talk about what a nonsense it was. And I remembered I'd been writing about it so much, I thought I'd better find out where this 100,000 figure came from. It was Labor policy. And I thought there must be an illustrious report, a big tome that's being used somewhere that actually backs this up, a university-based periodical. Went back. I found where it came from. Originally, it came from the 2012, I think, a Labor Party conference from Annette King, and Shearer. They lead at the time. But you know where they got it from? Just without a word of a lie, they got it from the 1981 Labour Manifesto. That was where that thing came from.
There you go. So it must be right?
They had basically dusted it off and thought this was a great idea. We'll announce it again.
Well, they didn't get it from ChatGPT. But the
No.
thing
Maybe they did.
about this, Ashley, is, good ministers, and, Duncan's girlfriend's one of these, what they do is they go out and they consult with the experts, and then they come up with policy. If Phil had sat down with you as an expert in the space and said, actually, what do you reckon we can do here? You would go, well, Phil, you might be able to build 1,000 the first year and ramp it up. So I wouldn't promise any more than 10,000 over 5 years. And he would have got a reality check.
I think, to be fair to Twyford, he actually did. Him and I had several coffees and talked about all these issues, Stu, and I've got to give him Mark some credit for that. Problem was he didn't listen to what I said. He went off and did what he was going to do anyway.
Exactly.
But we did
Who paid for the coffee? I bet you paid for the coffee.
I probably did. I'm sure I did.
Yeah, but my point, Ashley, is experts will tell you, this is what I learned in politics, experts will tell you, will give you a good reality check. And, you ignore experts at your own peril. And Twyford did, and he got egg all over his face. He was fired from cabinet for the second term. And he didn't need to be if he'd listened to people like you. Now, the other thing you can do is you can come up with aspirational visions and say, we're going to work really hard to do this. We mightn't get there. But remember, Twyford was so adamant we'd do this.
I recall.
You were against him.
Look, I was a big believer in it and backed him, and then I don't think we've spoken since. I've been looking for him around the Territory Peninsula. I'm going to run him over. You see, because I mean, he was. Yeah, and the other thing I just want to before we go, guys, I just want to clear this up, because if I don't clear it up, then it stands. Now you said someone was my girlfriend. Now you're suggesting my girlfriend was Erica Stanford, Stu.
I mentioned no names. You mentioned. No. I was talking about Megan Woods.
Oh my God!
Well,
I'm definitely denying both then.
I'm just going to move out of camera here.
I expected you to say, Dunk, when you had to go at Bishop because house prices, I expected you to say, oh, well, if Erica Stanford was Minister of Housing, she wouldn't have come out and said something so silly. But you missed your trick, mate.
Yeah, no, but I think she's a very good minister. Just on that, before we go, house prices. Surely house prices going up means a strong economy. Them coming down confuses everybody, and it means that we stall like we are now. The final take from either of you, from both of you, Ashley, house prices up or down? What's best?
Oh, house prices up. I've written about this extensively over the years. I don't talk about it so much now, but the relationship between there was a study came out. I can't remember who published it about 3 years ago that placed New Zealand as the 5th wealthiest nation on earth, and that wasn't just on incomes; it was on assets as well. So our asset position made us, and that was about 80% of that was built on the value of our homes. So the relationship was really strong. And it was interesting because when you looked at that and you looked at the tracking of house price increases over the years and the impact that had on serviceability, in other words, the ability that people had to actually afford to continue to pay mortgages, New Zealand was actually in a pretty benign position. Real quick figure. In 1984, 1985, if you looked at the average price of a house in New Zealand, the average household income and the interest rates that presided at the time, it was taking just over 50% of income to service a mortgage. By 2018, which is the last time I think the study's been done, if you looked at the average price of a house, the average household income and the interest rates that prevailed at the time, it was taking about 37% of a household income to service a mortgage. So it had nothing to do with the house price costs. It was to do with what it was costing you to actually own that home. The cost of servicing that mortgage had come down and the value of those properties had gone up. So New Zealand was a wealthy nation as a result of that. House prices, as long as those figures work, is great for the country.
That formula works. Stu, I remember this question tripped up some Labor Party ministers a number of years ago as well, which was, should house prices, what's a good thing, going up or down? Because you were trying to, I remember Labor at the time was trying to bring downward pressure on them. Your take on this is what? Surely the same as Ashley's.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Ashley's the expert in this area. So house prices up, but let's be careful, not too much faster than CPI. So we still want them to kind of be affordable, but I'm with Ashley. We need investors in this market, because rentals are owned by Ma and Pa who are putting aside some money in a rental that allow people who don't want to buy a house, who can't buy a house, to live, but also gives them a little bit of a backstop for when they retire. So yeah, build more houses, house prices up, but not skyrocketing, close to the rate of inflation. But actually at 37% of your income to pay for a mortgage, I'm not earning enough, because mine at the moment is significantly more than that.
Yeah, anyway. Well, everybody's is now because interest rates went up so high. But
I'm trying to convince my mother, who I'm involved with in this property deal. I'm trying to convince her that she can't expect to buy under GV and then sell for a whopping amount over GV in the same market. I'm just trying to get it to...
Good on it,
hey, I'm a baby boomer and I want twice as much from my house and I expect theirs for half. I was like, Mum, it's not the deal.
Well, we're trying to convince you that you should be paying us for coming on here and giving your time to make you look good, mate.
Well, I'm starting to think that too. So now's the time to call it quits. Hey, and all good things will happen because your time is this is a trial, 90-day trial period, Stu. You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
No.
Okay, guys.
Brilliant. Good.
All the
Okay.
listeners,
Cheers,
hope you
Ashley.
enjoyed it.
Stu.
Catch you. Bye.
Cheers, mate.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, time for the Editor to the Editor. Hiya, Duncan. Why don't you do a story about the woke liberal New Zealand media completely ignoring the Australians marching to save their country yesterday? They did a story when the pro-Palestinians protested over the Harbour Bridge. Oh, to be a white man these days. Cheers, says Greg. Okay, Greg. Yeah, no. That's us. Thanks for all your feedback and your support. Get in touch through our social media at Duncan Garner Podcast on TikTok and Instagram, or flick us an email, duncan@rover.nz. To my team, Brody, thank you, mate. We'll do it all again, of course, tomorrow. And remember, life's no dress rehearsal. There is no curtain raiser. This is it. We live one of the best places on earth. So get out there, enjoy it, and please subscribe. Okay? Have a great rest of the day. Take care, folks. Ta-da.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, sponsored by the Brothers Green. Feed your gut what it needs. Digest Gut Health Protein Powder. I use it myself. It supports natural digestion and gut health. Made with premium Canterbury-grown hemp powder and a unique blend of active kiwifruit enzyme powder and kiwifruit skin extract, offering natural prebiotics and a nutrient-rich profile to complement a balanced lifestyle. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch.